Welcome back. We are still studying Erikson's psychosocial stage theory. This is part 2 of the videos because we are picking up in stage 4. So stage 4 is called industry versus inferiority. This is school-age children. So here's my question for you. What seems to be important to school-age children? Because previously we've looked at infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. How are the school-age kids different? Well, they are in more of a social setting. They are perhaps feeling a bit more competitive because they're comparing themselves to one another in academic and physical ways, social ways. So during these school age years, and this is ages 6 to about age 12, children are a bit preoccupied with comparing themselves to their peers. They're wanting to know, are they competent? Are they good enough? Are they equal to or even better than their peers in some circumstances? And I don't just mean grades. Yes, academically is part of it, but physically, can they run as fast? Can they keep up in PE class? Socially, do they have as many friends as others? They're trying to see if they are competent, and they have this need to feel successful. Now, that doesn't mean they have to be successful in every single subject and everything that they try. But everyone needs to have something that they feel that they're good at, especially in an environment like school when you're constantly surrounded by peers and being graded and assessed. So success occurs from feeling competent in comparison to those peers that you're sitting next to all day long. So think about that in relation to teaching when you're giving out grades, when you're giving out social reinforcers, when you're using your token economy system. Every kid in that class needs to feel successful at some point during the day, during the week. So during these school age years, success occurs from feeling in some way competent to your peers. And failure occurs at this stage when you feel inadequate and you just can't keep up with your peers. You're not good enough. You feel like you're not smart enough. It can cause a sense of inferiority. It can even lead to a sense of learned helplessness. Sometimes when you have students who habitually don't turn in their work, maybe they've even done their homework, but they're still not turning it in. Sometimes it's because of learned helplessness, because of a sense of inferiority to where they just almost give up. This can connect to a rather sensitive issue for some parents, which is the start date of school. You know, some kids who are kind of on the borderline, parents have this call that they need to make. Do they start their kids in kindergarten when they're younger than the rest of the students, or do they hold them back a year? Most research says it's probably more effective to hold them back a year to wait. That way they are more likely to feel successful, to be of the right age, to be competent among their peers, that if they're too young, they might simply not be ready for some of those skills and they might always feel behind. So if you fail at stage 4, how might that manifest later in life? Again, I mentioned older students who might habitually not turn in their work or not come to class or just not try, or teenagers who simply feel inadequate compared to their peers. So if you plan on teaching students at this age, here's some things you're going to want to think about. You're going to want to think about things like mastery learning. So mastery learning is something we will talk about later, but it's the idea of focusing on the fact that it's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes are part of learning. And that what's more important is to think about the process of learning, the journey of learning, and that you want them to try to master that content before moving forward and leaving them behind. So as a teacher, that means that you might want to look at allowing for revisions of work, helping them learn the material before simply moving on to the next concept. So now we're at stage 5, identity versus role confusion. So teenagers, what's important to teenagers? This photo probably tells you a little bit. With teenagers, their peers become more important than their family in some ways. Their peer relationships, how people view them, who they think they are, and how other people view them. So stage 5 is called identity versus role confusion. This is technically the adolescent period, starting around the age of 12, going to around to the age of 20. I do want to point out current research shows that we are spending much longer in this stage than we used to, that stage 5 can now last up to age 30. So this is a pretty long stage where you're wrestling with, who are you? What is your true political belief? How do you feel when it comes to things like gender roles? What occupation do you want? What are your actual religious beliefs? Not just the beliefs that your parents had or that your parents wanted to instill in you, but what are your beliefs and who are you? These are big questions. So what is identity? If this stage is about identity versus role confusion, identity is a lot of things. So it can be your personality traits. Are you an extrovert or an introvert? Your talents and abilities. Are you athletic? Are you good with people? Are you a leader? Are you a great reader, an artist? How you identify with different role models in your life, as well as the adoption of different types of social and gender roles. So a lot of, again, big, weighty issues here. I thought we'd take a second and take a look at this self-inventory, looking at psychosocial development, focusing on identity. So you're welcome to get some paper out and hit pause if you want to actually go through this. I will show you how to score yourself, or you can just look at it casually. So let's begin. You would rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 on how strongly you disagree to agree with each statement. So I will scoot over to the side so that you can see them all. Things like having a stable self-concept that doesn't really change, combining short-term goals with long-term plans, whether or not you're susceptible to peer pressure, whether you have high levels of self-acceptance. Do you accept yourself? Are you able to make decisions without being too indecisive? Again, if you need more time, feel free to hit pause. Whether you're optimistic about yourself and your life. Number 7, do you feel like you are responsible for what happens to you? Are you in control of your own life, good or bad? Number 8, do you seek self-acceptance by being your own person? Do you feel like you're able to just be yourself around others? Number 9, are you able to be truly close with other people? Physically and emotionally close without losing who you are, not just simply becoming what they want you to be. And number 10, are you cognitively flexible? That you don't have to be right all the time, that you're open to other people's opinions, and you can see that sometimes you might be wrong and still not lose your sense of self. Okay, and again, pause if you need more time. So you can see there that the higher you score on that, all of those statements were very positive within the world of identity formation. And the higher you score on that, the better you are in terms of knowing who you are, having formed a true identity. So, and you're welcome to, if you did go through and do the scoring, to take a look at the scoring here. You would simply add up all of your numbers and plug them into these ranges here. Oh, and I'll scoot over this way so you can see all of it. All right. Now, a little bit more on identity versus role confusion. If you succeed at this stage, you have self-understanding, you know who you are fine with being yourself, you've achieved identity. If you fail at this stage, you tend to have what we call repression and a bit of confusion when it comes to knowing who you are. Now, often we use the word repression when it comes to one's sexual identity. You can repress anything. You might find that perhaps you discover that you are a true political conservative, but you might repress that around your friends or your family members because you don't want them to know your true beliefs. Or you might believe that you're an atheist, but you might repress that around your family and others because you don't think they would understand. So you can repress anything as long as you're just denying part of your identity. So teaching tips, if you're going to be working with children in these age ranges, so this is middle school and high school, you're going to want to consider using a variety of role models. They need a lot of examples to look at. So go beyond the textbooks, bring in speakers, think about what you can do to present them with a variety of individuals to look up to. Allow for exploration, whether this is through their books that they read, the presentations that they give, the research papers that they write. Let them pick some topics. Let them explore different avenues of their personality. Maybe whether this could occur through career day, through having them visit different churches, to having them read up on different political figures, and incorporate their own interest into projects. This helps them to understand their talents and their abilities and their personality. So we have looked at these first 5 stages. We're going to delve a little bit deeper into identity because this is one that is going to be so important to so many of your students. In order to truly determine your identity, you have to go through 2 things: exploration and commitment. So exploration means you have to actually spend some time thinking about these issues, that you have to actually consider what your choices might be. Just because you dated the same person all through high school, is that truly the person that you're meant to be with? Just because you were raised Catholic your whole life, are you actually Catholic? Have you actually explored or thought about other religions or other points of view? So you have to explore, and you have to eventually make some sort of a commitment, some sort of a decision where you've answered questions based upon your period of exploration. Let's go through what happens. We call these identity statuses. All of us, every single one of us, starts off with, put the hand the other way, diffusion. Diffusion is where you haven't done either of these. You have not explored, you have not made any commitments. This is the entrance stage for all of us into stage 5. Diffusion, again, had not explored, had not made any commitments. You lack a sense of direction. You're not dealing with any of these grown-up kinds of issues. I love the Chris Pratt meme up here. Now, although this is where all of us start, the problem occurs is when people get stuck in this stage, when they simply sit back and they don't want to fill out college applications. They don't want to talk about their future. They are just stuck and not dealing with those kinds of issues that they need to deal with. I thought this cartoon was relevant. So it says, sorry, I'm go away. As he picked up the video game controller, the trap was sprung, and Ryan's mother forced him to fill out college applications, which is how some parents might feel when their children are in diffusion. And just to go backwards for a moment, those teens who do get stuck in diffusion, they tend to withdraw from their parents. They tend to withdraw from their friends if their friends are moving forward. So if they have friends that have already decided what college they're going to, and they're already picking out their roommates, the ones who are in diffusion are probably going to withdraw because they don't want to hear about that. They're just not ready for it. They also might be more likely to turn to drugs and alcohol to help them perhaps cope with the fact that they don't want to deal with these things just yet. All right, another identity status, not everyone goes through this one, but some people might, is called foreclosure. Foreclosure is where you've made a commitment and you've said, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to be, but you never really thought about your options. Oftentimes is that you're following in your parents' footsteps without ever really thinking about it. We typically call this premature identity formation, and it's done to please other people, not necessarily yourself. So my example's over here to the side. Now, Steve Irwin's son, for all I know, he has found the perfect fit for his personality and for his life, but it does appear at the surface level to be similar to foreclosure, that he has simply followed in his father's footsteps. This meme over here to my side, so you can see son and dad in 1998, and now 20 years later that he's grown up and he's doing the same job as his dad. This can be someone who has just simply taken on the career or other type of roles that their parents want them to do and haven't really thought about it. Now, often these individuals look completely together. Like you're going to go, wow, they already know what college they're going to. They know what job they're going to have. They've got it all figured out. But if they never really truly explored their options, there's a chance that later in life they might go, you know what, this isn't what I really wanted to do, and have to go back and figure themselves out again. So that actually leads to my question. What do you think might happen if you pick a career without exploring your options? I have a lot of friends who've gone through this. You're probably too young for this, but I've had friends who in their 40s decide to go back to college and get a different degree because they didn't really follow their heart. So something you guys, word to the wise, you guys need to be thinking about that right now. Have you chosen the major that is the best fit for you? Picture yourself 30 years down the road. Are you doing what's going to truly make you happy? Another identity status, moratorium. Moratorium is a must. Everybody must go through moratorium if you want to successfully pass this stage. Moratorium is, drumroll, exploration, exploring your options, not making any commitments. This is what we typically call the identity crisis. Now, when you hear the word identity crisis, it sounds so bad and negative, but it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be a time where you're just simply thinking about the options in the world in front of you. College freshman year is considered to be an established, institutionalized period of moratorium. From the point of view of a psychologist, you should not choose a major until you're a sophomore. Your freshman year should be trying out every class you're potentially interested in and figuring out what works for you. It's also a period when it's good to perhaps attend different churches, listen to different political points of view. I remember a period of time when I was going through like this, I would listen to very conservative talk radio and listen to very liberal talk radio, both during the same day, to hear both points of view to try to figure out where I really fit. This might also be when you date different people, trying to figure out again, who are you and you know, what's the best fit for you. Then finally, we establish achievement. Achievement only occurs, and I like to point this out. Oh, go backwards. Achievement only occurs after exploration. Technically, at least according to psychologists. So if you start off in 9th grade saying, I'm going to be a lawyer because my dad wants me to be a lawyer, and you just follow that path and you never consider anything else, have you really achieved achievement? If you start off in 9th grade dating one person and you stay with them your entire teenage years, college years, and so on, how are you 100% certain that that's the person you're supposed to be with? I mean, it could be, but again, achievement says commitment occurs after you have at least thought through whether or not that option is right for you. Doesn't mean you have to try every major or date everybody in the world, but you have to at least think about it. So as you can see, there are 4 different identity status categories. So whether or not you have committed and whether or not you have explored leads to these 4 statuses that we just looked at. The last stage, and this is a little bit beyond the school years, but I wanted to cover it because it relates to you all as college students, is intimacy versus isolation. This is a stage where you need to learn to develop close relationships with other people. Now, most people think when I say intimacy versus isolation, I mean, you're either in a relationship or you're not. You're either married or you're not. That is so not it. It is, can you have a close relationship with another person? It could just mean a friend. It doesn't have to mean an intimate partner, a romantic relationship. That in your close friendships and in your significant relationships, do you truly share your thoughts and feelings? Do they know the real you? Do you let them have that little slice to see who you truly are? Or do you have too many walls up? Or are you pretending to be something that you're not? So to be truly intimate and to succeed at this stage, you have to have that sort of close relationship with someone and let them know who you truly are. If you fail at this stage, there are lots of reasons you can fail. You can fail because you're too promiscuous. and you're seeing too many people and none of it's deep whatsoever because you're too exclusive. Now that's an odd one, exclusivity. So maybe you can fail at this stage because you have one significant other and that's the only person you really care about in your life. And you aren't open to other friendships or other relationships because you're so invested in that one person. And also isolation. Now, you might think isolation means that you've chosen to be by yourself. I'm alone. You can suffer from isolation and be married to somebody. Isolation means that you are bricked up so high that you have separated yourself from other people, even if they're living with you. Okay. Now, I had mentioned once before, way back at the beginning of part 1, that sometimes that we don't ever skip a stage, but sometimes we go in different orders. This is where an interesting gender difference can occur. Not all the time, but it can occur. So here's the gender difference. Stage 5 and 6, identity and intimacy. The typical pattern is you figure out who you are, and then you learn to open yourself up and be in relationships with other people. Males follow the typical pattern. That is the healthier way of going through Erikson stages. Females tend to cross them. Females tend to first get in a solid relationship with somebody and then figure out who they are, which is why when there's a breakup, it oftentimes affects females more because after the breakup, the male, he already knows who he is. He's already gone through identity formation, so he's ready to move forward. After the breakup, the female says, well, who am I now? I was so-and-so's girlfriend. I don't know who I am anymore. And they often pair their interests and their traits and their talents is connected to the significant other, that sometimes those two things become a bit too entangled. And so if their significant other likes sci-fi fiction, then suddenly they like sci-fi fiction. Or if their significant other loves reggae music, suddenly they like reggae music. They don't figure out who they are first. So interesting gender difference doesn't happen to all of us, but it can occur. We're going to finish with some practice questions. So let's see. Jason, he is a 14-year-old 7th grader who's moved to St. Cloud this summer from another state. A review of his school record shows that Jason repeated 1st and 3rd grade. His elementary school grades were satisfactory and needs improvement. His current teachers state that they're unsure of his academic skills because he typically does not turn in assignments and appears to clown around and not take things seriously. What stage do you think he failed at? Oops, pardon me. Kicked my tray. What do you think he failed at? Now, remember, since these things are cumulative, although he's 14, we don't see an identity issue here. So he's repeated 2 grades. He gets some needs improvements. He doesn't turn in work. He clowns around. It sounds to me like his problem would be, and we'll see if you agree with me, stage 4 industry, because stage 4 is when you're trying to compare yourself to peers. And if you fail at that stage, you're less likely to try in school, which means you might be more likely to repeat a grade. You might be more likely to get needs improvement and not turn in your work. And again, these questions are harder than I would put on a quiz or a test, but I just wanted to give you food for thought to see how these things can manifest. Eric's 2nd grade teacher, didn't mean to say the word teacher twice, teacher. Eric's 2nd grade teacher is concerned about him. He seems bright, but he tells his teacher he can't do the work and will not start assignments unless the teacher is there to help and reassure him. Additionally, he always waits for the teacher to help him put on his coat and boots, even though she's encouraged to do so himself. What stage is he having problems with? I would guess stage 2, autonomy. Now there's potential a little bit of initiative up there with not being able to do the work, but it's this idea that he's not doing physical things on his own. He wants the teacher to put on his coat, put on his Oops, he won't actually pick up the pencil and start working on his work unless she's there. So to me, it sounds a bit more physical than navigating his social world and decision making, which would be stage 3. Next, Joe's a college junior, mediocre academic record, though he's very intelligent. His teachers describe him as lacking in initiative and creativity. He does well in lecture classes, but is hesitant to participate in group discussions, has difficulty coming up with ideas for independent projects. What do you think? Well, my guess would be stage 3, initiative. Initiative is about, can you make decisions? Can you lead? Can you come up with ideas? And heck, I even put the keyword in there, initiative. So that one to me sounds like a problem with stage 3. All right, so that's all, folks. Thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate it.